Namaste everyone. Thank you for joining in this class on Kala Sarpa. And today we'll be looking at Rahu in the 6th house and Ketu in the 12th house. Okay, so we'll be covering the 6-12 axis. But before we begin, let's start with the usual Shanti mantra. Yeah. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunakatu, Sahavidyankara Vavahai, Tejasvinadaditamastu Mavidavishawahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this is an appreciation of the knowledge of Jupiter, which is coming from a medium, which is very much Rahuvian in nature. Okay. So Kala Sarpa with Rahu in the 6th house. Okay, the 6-12 axis. And a lot of things, good things will be said with with 6th house Rahu. But then in my opinion, this is a very personal opinion, I am not discounting anything else. 6th house Rahu gives you terrible enemies. Okay, it gives you diseases that are hard to diagnose. Okay, it's good for fighting enemies, but to fight enemies, it is the placement where you will fight a lot of enemies. But to fight enemies, you'll need to have enemies in the first place. Okay, so Rahu in the 6th house will give you a lot of terrible enemies. Okay, so 6th house, we know it is an Upachaya house. That means it grows with time. 6th house is also a Trikasthana. So, it's a very promising placement, but you'll get mixed results with, anyone having Rahu in the 6th house will get mixed results. Okay, so what does Rahu represent? It represents desire and obsession. Okay, and what is Ketu? It denotes ambivalence as well as detachment. So with Rahu in the 6th and Ketu in the 12th, there is a bias for, a lot of adversarial activities regarding the environment, labor practices, medicine, social security. And this can come at the cost of sleep, sexual boundaries or spiritual practice. If you have to understand Rahu in the 6th house, you just look at the chart of Sri Rama. Okay, he was very peaceful guy. If you look at the Ramayana, he never wanted to fight with anyone, including Ravana. He was dragged into battles which he never wanted to fight. Okay, that is what Rahu in the 6th house does. Okay, it will take away your sleep. Because Ketu, in the 12th house, it denotes, detachment. So the detachment can happen from the practice of sleep. Okay. Now Rahu is the rogue or the troublemaker. Okay, because it is the foreign element. And 6th house, housing Rahu, it can make the native a person who makes life difficult for others. Okay, what is the 6th house? It is the battlefield of competition, litigation, and warfare. It is also the fertile breeding ground for death, divorce, and illness. Yes. So what is the opposite of the 6th house? It is the 12th house, which is the house of bhoga. That means the house of enjoyment. Okay, leisure and pleasure. So if the 6th house is the boxing ring of life, the 12th house is the private space where we nurse or lick our wounds. Okay. So since the lunar nodes are associated with our primordial nature, they reflect instincts and the visceral desires that operate unconsciously, stimulated by, subliminal influences. Okay. So some of our most primitive influences like the survival instinct or, the flight or fight response, they are linked to the nodal axis through these houses. That means through the 6-12 axis. Okay. Now, the 6th house is the house of the intestines. Okay. And since Rahu represents the Vata element, so it is also, Vata means it separates. Okay. So, it represents discontinuities, irregularities, and spasms. And various intestinal disorders can manifest. Okay. For example, irritable bowel syndrome, or colitis, and so on. Okay. Now, the nodes are also the karaka for kurmi. Okay, kurmi means parasite. Okay, krumi. creamy. It's in some cultures it is known as kirmi, okay, or krumi. So Rahu in the sixth house, almost every time it indicates bowel elements. Okay, even if you study medical astrology, you'll see that Rahu in the sixth house can indicate bowel ailments. Okay. For example, if you have Rahu in the sixth, maybe you land up in some place in Africa, or maybe in some highly populated areas of India, and then you come home with intestinal worms. Okay. And what happens if if the doctors fail to detect those worms, they will proliferate to rob you of all your nutrients, and they will also provoke toxicity in the blood. Okay. I'll share an example from real life. Okay. A friend of mine, he had gone to Kashmir. He's from Assam only. So he had gone to Kashmir, and he made his way with his family to a houseboat over the Dal Lake. And what he told me was, the people who operate those boat houses, they wash the utensils and everything, all the dirty stuff they use, using the water of the lake, and the water gets dumped into the same lake, and the same water they use for cooking. Okay. And when he had the food, it actually caused a lot of bowel ailments. Okay. And he got sick. He had to stay back for almost 2 weeks, where he could not recover. And not only they had to spend a lot of money for his treatment, it also delayed a lot of his business plans, because he had a few business meetings coming up over the weekend, but we could not attend because he had that. Okay. So that friend, he had Rahu in the sixth house. Okay. So it was a very bad experience. All right. So the sixth house will also rule small animals and pets. Okay. So, no matter how much you love your pets, how much you love small animals, they are a source of contamination for humans, right? Dogs, they acquire worms from improperly prepared food, and they pass them to their pet, to their young ones, or even to their owners, by licking them, right? Similarly, cats can be a source of toxoplasmosis. Yes, it's a parasite that gets excreted through their feces, right? So, if some lady in your house is pregnant, those ladies, they must handle kitty litter with extreme care. Okay. Because that parasite which gets excreted through their feces, it gets easily transmitted and can infect the brain of an unborn child. Okay. And there is another disease called the Lyme's disease. Okay. Which comes from pets, right? And it causes flu-like symptoms, joint pain, and even some kind of pervasive lethargy that can rob you of your energy for months. Okay. Again, this is a consequence of Rahu in the sixth and Ketu in the 12th house. Okay. And the sixth house is also the house of your daily routine. Okay. And what is the most basic daily routine that you can have? Your breath and your diet. You may not do anything else, but you will still breathe, right? You'll still have your food. So sixth house is it is associated with prana, which provides oxygen to replenish the blood. So Rahu in the sixth house can cause erratic breathing, incomplete respiration, or some kind of susceptibility to airborne pollutants in our environment. Okay, because Rahu also rules the environment as a whole. So you've seen some children who do deliberate breathing from their mouths, and then they get very, very sick. Okay, so that is Rahu in the sixth. Rahu in the sixth in medical astrology, if you take a deep dive into medical astrology, you will understand that Rahu in the sixth also represents asthmatic disorders. Okay, it can cause asthma. Okay. Now, we have to understand the psychology of how these nodes work, because these planets, they mainly work on the psychological nature of humans. Okay. So the sixth house, as I said, it rules routine. Yes. What is the most basic routine for a human being? The diet. Yes. Routine can also include exercise. It can also include work or service, etc. And again, disclaimer, don't see the sixth house for your job. Okay. It is just a routine that you follow in your job. It does not represent your job. Okay, be very, very, distinctive with this. So, because the sixth house rules routines, so Rahu will provoke disruptions and irregularities in your daily routine. Okay, if Rahu is very strongly placed, for example, if it is exalted, or if it is, if it is with or action oriented planet like Mars, it can make you obsessed with daily routines. I have to do this no matter what. And this obsession can be to such a degree that your friends might wonder if you're suffering from some kind of OCD. Okay, obsessive compulsive disorder. So under this compulsion, or under this pattern of Rahu, you may also fall into a pattern of bad habits. Okay, now if Rahu is aspected by malefics, then you'll not have these problems coming up. Okay, but if it is joining some malefic, for example Mars, it can cause, the native can self-inflict some kind of violence on the body. Okay, or it represents people who make it a tradition that I must go to the gym every day, or must do my 10 kilometers of running every day, otherwise I'll not get a healthy sleep, and so on. Okay, so Rahu in the sixth can make one very, very fearful. Okay, for example, there are a category of people who are known as germophobes. Okay, that means they don't shake hands with anyone. Okay, or a hypochondriac, right? Which, someone who interprets every symptom as a potential threat of illness. Okay, so it creates a common, perception that, the world is out there to get me. I'm not safe in this world. Okay, so that is Rahu in the sixth. And it can also make you very argumentative. It can also make you create conflicts in situations that don't require opposing forces. And since this Rahu is mostly undercover, or it operates from the shadows, it can be difficult to pin him down and admit to his unconscious provocations. Okay, now at a higher, if Rahu is well placed, okay, at a friendly sign, or if it's exalted, it can actually indicate a capacity for tapas. Okay, tapas means the internal fire. Okay, the internal fire that allows you to attain things called siddhis. Okay, siddhis are nothing but skills. Okay, if you practice something for long enough, it becomes a siddhi for you. So Rahu can actually indicate a capacity for tapas. Tapas means burning yourself internally while doing something. Okay. Now we know that the sixth house, it rules maternal aunts and uncles. So Rahu's placement in the sixth house can indicate a spectrum of irregularities amongst those relatives. Okay, from maybe from mere eccentricity to alcoholism or drug abuse, even physical or mental illness, or even mental instability, or maybe same-sex orientation. Okay, so Rahu is usually a secretive planet, and if it gets more malefic, then it operates in relative secrecy. Okay, so because it is secretive, it represents hereditary diseases that threaten all family relatives. Okay, and since Rahu is mysterious, Rahu represents the foreign element, these diseases may be difficult to diagnose or cure. Okay, so the sixth house, we also know that it rules servants and pets, and the native may employ a foreign housekeeper or keep exotic birds, reptiles, or other imported pets. Okay, now Rahu favors subterfuge, right? That means, the native may marry and divorce for expedient reasons. Okay, for example, exploiting property laws to gain, or maybe a favorable divorce settlement, or even to gain residency status. Okay, such a native may work as a surrogate spouse just for sex, or to conceive a child. And after the job gets done, then the relationship is terminated. Okay, now in terms of your physical part, you may face physical challenges, or you may be prone to some kind of accident or injury or even illness. Okay, so consequently, you may choose a career where you can exert a positive influence in situations where people's security is threatened. Okay, So, if you get over the problem of, the world is about out there to get me, you can actually have a positive influence on a lot of people. Okay. So you can work as a medical specialist, or maybe as a police or, military officer, or an environmental activist or a legal expert. Okay. And, but then, if Rahu is negatively placed, then the native may end up exploiting others through the same channels. For example, blackmailing and extorting under threat of violence, or sale of drugs to, to those who are ill or addicted, or even unfair employment practices, or maybe threats of litigation. Okay. So now, such a native may suffer from a compulsive work ethic, and it can be so compulsive that it may eventually end up damaging his health or marriage. And because Rahu's appetite is never satisfied, the larger than life ambitions of the native may get him into situations which are too big for him to handle. Okay. So, Rahu, we know that it is the greatest risk taker. So, he furthers his career. The native will further his career via unconventional practices or advanced technology in areas such as environmental protection, or legal procedures, or medical treatments, or military strength, as well as police tactics. Okay. Now, Rahu in the sixth can also create doctors. That means it usually gives employment in the medical field, especially those who administer drugs or use advanced technology. Okay. So, what kind of jobs can you expect with Rahu in the sixth house? Maybe allergy specialists, maybe anesthesiologists, maybe radiologists. Okay. Or maybe pharmacists. So, or, even toxic substance specialists. Okay. Now, in alternative medicine, Rahu in the sixth, it rules Ayurvedan. Okay. Who are Ayurvedans? They are, fate, the ones who use Ayurveda to heal various kinds of diseases. Okay. It can also indicate fate healers, for example, the missionaries. Then herbalists who use a lot of herbs in their medical treatments, homeopaths, naturopaths, practitioners of traditional Chinese medicine, purveyors of essential oils, etc. Okay. And this can also include a vegetarian who specializes in exotic pets. Okay. So just give me a second. I'll be back with the remaining part. Okay. So the sixth house is also, the house of helping others through the occult or the metaphysical sciences. Okay. It also, indicates people who may have career as helping others overcome, black magic, or maybe tantra, or maybe the occult. Okay. It also favors professional handling of toxic substances in the environment, and that could include things like workplace safety inspection, hazardous materials handling, or environmental compliance, toxic waste transport and disposal, medical waste disposal, centers of disease control and disposal or destruction of expired or illegal drugs. Okay. I've seen Rahu in the people having Rahu in the sixth house being employed in hospitals as those who conduct postmortems on dead bodies. Okay. And that is also a profession. Okay. Now, the sixth house is also the house of intelligence services. Okay. So Rahu in the sixth, it promotes the concept of shadowy service. Okay. For example, someone may act as a proxy or a surrogate for institutions like the police or military. Okay. Or and any other ministry of service. Okay. And such natives, they may also engage in social work with clientele among the defranchised, like, drug users or criminals or prostitutes, the homeless and unemployed, and people who are suffering from AIDS and other, sexually transmitted diseases. Okay. Now, Rahu is very opportunistic. Rahu is very predatory by nature. Okay. So the native can also be mercenary. Selling can act as a mercenary. Okay. Selling his or her services to the highest bidder. And aside from being soldiers of fortune, this also includes arms dealers or brokers in the black market for body parts, drug dealers, prostitutes, civil servants who are open to bribery, as well as lobbyists in the, in the defense or medical or pharmaceutical industries. Okay. Now, this Rahu, which has a very smoky nature, this Rahu's presence in the sixth, it also rules work environments, polluted with chemicals and smoke, for example, say coal mines or foundries or kitchens or paint factories, or after hour bars with no smoking restrictions, and then places where opium is available free or is smoked free, and so on. Okay. Now, these natives, if Rahu is afflicted, these natives can be agent provocators. They can indulge in the habit of stirring up conflict to exploit advantage. Okay, for example, lawyers and defense contractors, they are examples of such profiteers. Okay, whenever you go to a lawyer to fight a case, no matter who wins or loses, the facilitator will always make money, right? It can also indicate doctors, right? Whenever you go to a doctor for a treatment, no matter whether the patient lives or dies, the doctor will still end up making money, right? So such a native, they may be a zealous prosecutor of crimes. Okay, for example, they may act as lawyers who are involved in stopping cruelty to animals or environmental pollution or medical malpractices or labor strikes or human trafficking, okay, or prejudicial employment practices, maybe unsafe working conditions, crimes against persons, crimes against women, class action suits involving pharmaceuticals and war crimes as well. Okay, so as a defense attorney, such a native may represent clients involving labor violations, prostitution, drug abuse, environmental violations, unjust termination, etc. So, given Rahu's serpentine nature, such a native is very adept at finding loopholes through which even a guilty client may escape. Okay, so Rahu in the sixth, it may also reveal a fascination with the underclass, for example, prostitutes, or drug dealers or drug users and assorted people having a lowly life or lowly existence. And more positively, the native, he or she might be very passionate about defending the oppressed or the defranchised and also victims of social justice. Okay, now we know that Rahu is a very disruptive planet. Okay, so in the sixth house of open enmity, it can invite acquisitions or adversaries or clashes of opinion, or maybe divorce and litigation. Okay, and the native, they may seek employment in fields offering a regular diet of conflict, no matter whatever the context is. Okay, whether it is health care or maybe labor relaxations or environmental protection or so on. Okay, so such a native will always thrive in fields that test his brain under a lot of stress, and they usually acquire, or they usually win their prestige via courage, under fire and dogged resistance. Okay, so wars on crime, diseases, drug addictions, labor inequity, or child labor, equal pay for women, or equal pay for the slaves, or freedom for slaves, or prostitution, or pollution, they are very appropriate fields. Okay, now the sixth house, it also rules debts and loans, and the native, he or she can profit by taking advantage of the financially marginalized. Okay, and such a native may operate a pawn shop, may offer check cashing services or provide rolling credit extensions, become involved in bankruptcy, sales and property foreclosures, or even engage in illegal activities like loan sharking. This is a very common phenomenon in the developing countries. Okay, so that is Rahu in the sixth. Okay, so as I said, a lot of good things have been told about Rahu in the 6th, but in my opinion, it gives you mixed results. If you have any questions, you can ask me. And in the next class, we'll be going for K2 and the 12th, along with the example charts.
Hey Dev,
Yeah, hi, Shrikant.
Dev, one quick question. Will this access work on D9 as well, or only D1 we are
No,
considering?
this is only D1. This is only D1.
Okay, okay, right.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
All right then. Fair enough. So thank you very much for joining in. A gentle reminder for the. Okay, what do you mean by conveying Jupiterian knowledge by the Rahuvian way? So this knowledge of astrology is Jupiterian, and it is coming to us via the internet, which is Rahuvian. Okay, that's what I meant. All right. Great. Okay then. So thank you so much for joining, and this is a reminder for all of you. You can join on this Friday for the class on Sri Suktam. Okay, so we'll try to explore the theoretical part and learn many things hopefully about from it. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
thank you for joining in. I'll see you in the next classes. Namaste. Om Gurave Namah.